Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the next edition of Adventures in Networking. Now I've done offending our guests that are in the back room. I'll say hello to Kelly. Kelly, how are you?
I'm good, and I definitely don't want to be offended. Thank you.
I'll try not to offend you. If you know what Pythagoras is and why we need pi, you can always leave a message in the chat. But that's not what we're here for. We are here today to talk about the business of time. And as usual, we're going to have a chat about our adventures in networking, our ongoing adventures in networking, which, Kelly, recently have been quite tiring, haven't they?
Yeah.
She doesn't know where I'm going with this. I'll tell you what, I haven't thought about this, but I am going to say this. I had a fantastic conversation. I'm probably going to do a LinkedIn post about what is the value of a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I had a one-to-one yesterday with Ashley Griffiths, and I will tag him after this. But, you know, some people, Kelly, you just have a conversation with and there's no agenda. I didn't get a piece of business from it, but I tell you what, I felt so much better just for having a chat with a good person. Came away energized. I had a load of ideas and I thought, do we put enough premium on that? You get this a lot, don't you?
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, we talk to people for a living, don't we? It's our job. But even if you don't, the importance and the power of just having a decent conversation with someone and them to listen to you and ask you questions is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's why sometimes you've got to have conversations with a few people to find those people. I just get I mean, I think everyone gets on with Ashley Griffiths, don't they? If you haven't spoken to them, but certain people you just connect with and you just have that honest, open, fun conversation. So
I'd also say really important to tell that person that was really good. So he'll see this and he'll be really thankful. But yeah, recognize that in people. It's always good.
It's a good post, actually, isn't it, on LinkedIn? If you've had a good one-to-one, why not say why? Tell the world.
Only problem is you then forget somebody that you have had a conversation with and you haven't tagged them, which is why I've never done it before, because I'm bound to miss somebody that I will then offend, going back to the original point.
Or I'm more thinking it's the people that then you go, well, I spoke to you on that day as well, and you haven't mentioned me. Probably by design, that would be the reason why, but there we go. Okay, right. So we're talking about time today, so that's my prompt to get on with it. Louise Miller, superstar within the Only Network. Louise Miller is a productivity mentor. Members would have seen her doing one of her Only Talk sessions, but it's such a good topic, isn't it, Kelly? Time management, productivity, getting stuff done without beating yourself up is so important at the moment when time just feels like, is it because I'm getting old? Time just seems to...
Yeah, it's not just time, attention.
Time and attention. Should we just bring her on stage? Because you've got a lovely framing question, haven't you? Hello, Louise.
Hello, lovely to be here. And I'm not offended by anything mathematically related, so it's all good.
I tried to say nice things about you. Louise is also known as the genie for your genius, which is one of my favourite kind of taglines that I've heard over the years. So welcome to Adventures in Networking, Louise. We were talking about this before we even spoke to you, and Kelly's got a really good kind of way of framing what we believe is quite a universal problem around time management. Kelly.
You say a good way, I'll probably waffle, but that is me. Louise, you already know this, but I think this will help, with the viewers as well. So I am a prime example of somebody thinks you're amazing. You're sat on my shoulder when I'm making decisions and I'm trying to prioritize. And I desperately want to be in your sphere and in your community in order to find the right way to prioritize and stop the procrastination. But I never have time to think about joining the thing that's going to help me do the thing that I need it to do. So my question is that normal behavior? And is that what you hear a lot from people?
Yes. And I think it's a big old problem, isn't it? We all know that we need to give ourselves that time, but allowing ourselves to do that is really hard. And a kind of way that I look at it, and specifically in terms of the so what I do in the community that you're talking about is create the space so that people can do that. It's a space for people to gather every month to sit and plan, make some good decisions so that they can feel really focused as they're moving through the month. And whether you're doing that, with me or on your own somewhere else, that's 90 minutes a month, which, let's say you're working 100 hours a month, which I think for a lot of people is a vast underestimate of how much they'd be working. But I said 100 hours because it makes the maths easier. We're back to maths. 90 minutes a month is 1.5% of your working hours that month. So is it worth an investment of that 1.5% of your time to make better use of the 98.5%? To me, when you look at it like that, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah. So I guess, sorry, James, follow on question from that. Could that sometimes be there's a financial reason behind it, or there's just not enough confidence that it's going to be the right thing for me, or I actually don't want the mirror held up because I'm not ready to hear what I need to hear?
Do you know, I think it's probably a bit of all of that.
Yeah.
But I think the thing I see that gets in the way the most for people is this feeling that they should be able to do it themselves.
Right.
And, you know, we're all smart, savvy humans. You wouldn't be running a business if you weren't. So, of course, we can do it ourselves, but do we do it ourselves? I think that's the question. Because we will always be drawn to do the thing that is shouting the loudest, the thing that is in front of our face that feels really urgent and really important. And as a human that just wants to get that thing off your plate, the temptation is going to be to go and do that thing rather than put the time aside. So putting the time aside to make those conscious, intentional choices just always gets shunted down to the bottom of the list of priorities because we've got so much to do. So it is a bit of a vicious cycle. Yeah.
We'll delve into that in more detail, but let's start at the top, Louise. So when did you realize, do you know what? I'm going to become a productivity coach. I'm going to help people get out of this quagmire, this sort of apparent paradox of I don't have time to work out time. When did you decide that's what I'm going to do? And why are you, because you've worked a lot of this stuff out. I know that you've done the work. So just tell us the kind of origins of it.
Yeah. So I started the business back in 2016. And basically the reason I'm doing well, I think for many of us, our businesses iterate and evolve along the way, don't we? But the reason I got into starting my own business in the first place was because I was suffering with work-related stress and anxiety in the job that I was doing before quitting my job. I was that kind of who needs something doing, give it to a busy person. And everything started to unravel in kind of 2015 and I became really unwell. And I knew in that moment I needed to choose whether I wanted to stay on that hamster wheel that I was on, where I was getting, you know, rewarded and encouraged and all the rest of it. I wasn't being treated badly, but I was also constantly exhausted. And like I said, had this diagnosis from my GP. Or did I want to try and find a way to get off that hamster wheel? So cut a long story short, several months after I'd had this kind of epiphany of, Louise, why are you always rushing around trying to get everything done? It took me a few months to kind of actually make the change and to decide I was actually going to quit my job, because I'd had that realization of, you know, why am I always rushing around? Because I'm in a job where no one is ever going to lean over to me and say, well done, Louise, you've done it all. Off you go. Go and have a rest. They'll just keep giving me more to do. And that was what was making me ill, because I wanted to do a good job. I wanted to be efficient. And the better I was, actually, the worse things were getting, because I was getting more and more to do. So anyway, handed in my notice, excited to go and kind of strike out on my own. And then I had a real existential crisis, because what I realized was that the things that I'm really naturally good at, so helping people get stuff done, helping people get organized, be efficient, all of that good stuff, is in conflict with the realization that I'd had that there is more to life than getting stuff done. And that kind of narrative is what was making me ill. So I didn't want to feed into that, but I also knew I had something to offer in that kind of space. And I also knew from working with, you know, when I first started out, I was a VA. We were just talking before we came on live. I worked behind the scenes with a lot of business owners during that time. And I could see that all of these creative people with loads of ideas flying at them all of the time really needed this kind of left brain grounding approach to help them actually get all of these ideas finished and out into the world. So I knew that they needed it. But before I could be comfortable helping them with all of that stuff, I felt that it was really important to change the way that we think about productivity. Because for most people, if you ask them to define productivity, they're going to say it's about doing more in less time. And that on the first surface of it seems fair, but it actually really stresses me out thinking about it like that, because this cramming more doing into less time kind of sets you up to be in this constant battle with time. Like we can somehow defeat it and we're just going to keep doing more. And my question there is, for what? Why? You know, what's the point of all of the doing? So I had to redefine productivity for myself to allow me to be able to do what I do and feel in integrity. And my definition is that productivity is about doing what's important as efficiently as you can to create space for what you love. So the additional things there about doing what's important and a reason why we're doing it. We're doing it to create space, not to fill that space with even more doing. So it's a sort of long-winded way around answering your question, but it was experience working with people, me kind of doing the inner soul searching around, I don't want to feed this. Let's just all be trying to tick as many things off our list as we can. How can I marry all of that? And that's how I came to do what I'm doing.
Could you just say that definition again? Just it's brilliant.
Yeah. So productivity is about doing what's important as efficiently as possible to create space for what you love.
I wonder if make a note of that, everyone that's watching this, by the way, because I'm definitely going to kind of go back to that, because what I find really interesting there is, yes, you've drawn attention to the bit about do what's important, not because I read into that not necessarily what the rest of the world tells you is important. You know, and we're going to go on to things like notifications later. But what I find really interesting about that, and I'm wondering if you were thinking the same, Kelly, when you talk about to give you space to do the things that you love, if I think about that in the context of our business, that doesn't mean to me going and playing golf. No. That means doing more of the things that I love within this business, not necessarily doing the things that stress me out or that I find that I don't particularly enjoy. Does that, Kelly, did you think that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And this is a conversation we have quite a lot, isn't it? And I think it's that ability to acknowledge and understand that we love our business. We should love our business. Therefore, doing it shouldn't be a chore, and doing some more of the fun stuff within the business is actually a really nice reward. Doesn't have to be a negative, does it? So, and then the other thing that I sort of picked up on there is if we just got to a space maybe that we're just telling ourselves we're so busy and overwhelmed all the time that we're just feeding that regardless of whether we are or not. I mean, I speak from experience there. Sometimes I'll sit down and I am busy. I'm not lying, but do I need to keep saying it? Am I actually as busy as maybe I was last week? No, probably not, but I'm still saying the same thing. So there's a couple of things there.
Yeah, and I think that's really interesting. So many of us wear busyness as a badge of honor. Like that must mean we're really important and we're going, great guns because we're busy. And I think that's damaging as well, actually, in this culture that we live in where everyone's running around like headless chickens. So I've tried to banish that word from my vocabulary. And it doesn't mean I'm not busy, but I'm choosing a different language because of the framing that we have around that word and the judgment that's attached to it. It's interesting, yeah. And you're right, James, the creating space can be whatever you want it to be. Creating space for what you love. That might be stuff in your business, or you might want to run a business where you can then go off and spend time with your family without stressing about work, or doing something else that brings you joy. It doesn't all have to be about work. So yeah, you're right. You can interpret that in whatever way, lands for you.
Just talk about, you mentioned you'd need to apply left brain thinking. Just clarify what do you mean by that?
So, and I think this black and white. Vanda will start telling me off if I go too far down the slightly rubbish my understanding of neuroscience. But the right brain, left brain thing is not as black and white as I think people used to think. But the right brain is the creative space where all of the ideas come in, and people who love playing over there, and they're kind of genuinely, got loads of ideas flying at them. Left brain is much more logical, organized, analytical kind of way of being. And we need both of those things to be working together in order for all of these amazing ideas to actually happen. And I think the challenge that I've seen a lot of business owners have, because a lot of particularly people I work with, they might not be in the creative industries, but they are very creative people. Mm-hmm. So the thing that is often holding them back is not a lack of inspiration or a lack of information. It's a lack of implementation. And the implementation is the left brain thing, which is where I can come in and help.
So we've got the reframe of this concept that time management is not just about cramming in more, because we can end up doing more of the things that aren't actually important, to use your terminology. We've got to talk about distraction, haven't we? Because that does feel like this is just a problem that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And we speak to a lot of business owners that staying on task and keeping attention on the thing that you need to do, why is that so difficult now?
because we're human and we're not robots. I was chatting with someone about this recently, actually, and I think her expectation was that she would somehow get to this place, this dream place where she would never ever be distracted ever. And I was sort of saying, well, why don't we just put that to one side? Because if that's what we're aiming for, you're going to just be setting yourself up to fail. So we are human and we will get distracted, but it is something we can practice, right, in terms of not allowing that to completely derail us. And I think I like to differentiate between two different kinds of distractions. There's the distractions that happen in the moment, which I think is what you're referring to, James, that prevent you from staying focused on a specific thing that you are supposed to be working on. But there's also distractions that prevent you from finishing a bigger project, that kind of take you off track with something bigger, that then means something doesn't ever get finished. And I think there's two different things going on. So with the distractions that are happening in the moment, so for example, let's say you're trying to write a blog or something and you keep finding yourself on LinkedIn or in your inbox or something. I think what is often going on there for people is that our attention spans are now so minuscule because there's so much information coming at us, particularly with notifications and all of that sort of thing, which we can talk about. But I think if we're trying to do something for too long, quite often people will hit a boredom threshold and they'll start to feel a bit bored by what they're doing. Or maybe the thing that they're working on, they get a bit stuck and they're not quite sure where to go with it and they start to feel a bit uncomfortable. Maybe they're a bit tired. And a lot of this is going on subconsciously. So you're not actively thinking it. The next thing you know is that you're off doing something which wasn't what you'd intended to be doing, because your instinct as a human is to reach for something more interesting or something comfortable, because we want to feel comfortable and nice. So we'll find ourselves off over there. So I think that's one thing. And then when it comes to the distractions that prevent you from finishing something. So I've had a client recently who has been working on a new paid offering. She's been working really hard on this new paid thing. And then she suddenly wanted to go off and prioritize creating a YouTube channel, setting up a new YouTube channel. And we talked about it. And there were a few things going on there, which again, I think are really common. On the surface, as I was just saying with the other example, the paid offering started to feel boring. The novelty had worn off, and creative souls need and love novelty. So when the novelty starts to wear off, you're going to run after something else. And this client also really values fun, and it wasn't feeling fun anymore. YouTube felt like fun. So she allowed that to distract her and wanted to run after that instead. But actually, there was another layer going on under that as well, which was fear. With this paid offering, she was like, what if I put, and she didn't realize this until we were talking it through, but what if I put this out there and nobody buys it? So, all of that going on, adding up to this kind of being distracted from what she'd intended to be doing and running after something else. So it can be quite a deep thing that's going on when we're distracted, and we don't realize it half the time.
Can you share, because I know we did this in Only Thoughts, but can you just share, Louise, for people watching this, your strategy for helping deal with distraction? Because it's I would never have thought of going about it this way. It's great. Yeah,
the kind of the less practical tips and the more kind of mindfulness one, is that what you mean, James?
The mindfulness stuff.
Yeah. So there are obviously practical things that we can do as well, but the thing that I think makes the most impact is that we practice being intentional, which is about just trying to practice staying in the moment as best you can, which is a mindfulness practice at the end of the day. And what that looks like in practice is making a decision in the moment when you're sitting at your computer, like, what am I meant to be working on? What do I want to be working on right now? What am I choosing? And then doing your best to focus solely on that thing. And then get curious and pay attention and see what happens. And you will notice an urge to switch to something else. Hopefully you'll notice before you spend too long there, but it takes practice. So notice when you feel that urge to switch and reach for something else, and allow yourself to sit and be with that discomfort rather than running away from it, because it will pass. Like all things, the discomfort will pass, and then you get to carry on with the thing that you had chosen to be focusing on. And another really key part of this is to celebrate that you caught yourself. So celebrate the fact that you caught yourself before you fell too far down the rabbit hole. Even if you did fall down the rabbit hole and 10-20 minutes have gone by, you still noticed. So if we can celebrate that to strengthen that neural pathway of, yeah, I really noticed, and now I'm bringing myself back on track. The more we do that, the more practice we get at that, the easier it becomes.
I love that. And I concur, because I've done that since your talk a few times. And you do I catch myself now going, oh, right, I've kind of stayed in that moment and I'm pushing on and getting the thing done. Kelly, I reckon one of your issues with this whole thing as a people pleaser, as I'm sure you don't mind me referring to you as, you find it difficult because there's always someone that wants a bit of your time and I can just have a quick chat with that person. How does this fit with you?
Oh, massively. There's a couple of things that really resonate there. The fear thing kind of hit home for me as well. It's like when we're so strapped for time and we're telling ourselves that constantly, is what I'm doing actually relevant and is it going to make a difference? And therefore, not necessarily is there a pound sign attached to it, but is this just a waste of time? I think that's a huge thing that I'm hearing. And for me, definitely, and I know there'll be a lot of people that sit in this space, it's really easy for me to go, well, I'm doing a good job because I'm helping someone else. Therefore, go me, pat on the back. But I'm working, aren't I? And I'm being a good person and I'm pleasing and I'm all of that stuff. And then, as James has alluded to, I'll go and kind of almost seek opportunities to help someone else because it then can put off what I'm actually having to focus on for whatever reason that might be.
Yeah, and for you, because that is what feels easy and comfortable and fun, and we want to feel those things, don't we? So
that's true.
It's really natural. Yeah.
There is an interesting point there, though, isn't there, about going back to your definition, Louise, about doing what's important. So Kelly's role, for example, is very customer facing. You know, she does spend a lot of time in the nurture, conversion, build community build. So have you got any tips from working out what discerning between what's important, what's really important, what's going to drive the business forward, what's important today? Because it's really difficult, isn't it?
It is difficult. Yeah. And I think the deciding what's important, we need to start from taking a huge step back and looking back at what the vision is. What's the vision that you have for your business and what do you each need to be doing to get the business there? What are the goals? And what is your role within making that happen? If you can get real clarity around what those activities are, and obviously check, do they need to be done by you? Could they be outsourced? All of that kind of stuff. I think if you've got a really clear sense of what it is that you are going to be doing and you are responsible for to move that business forward, just returning to that all the time and using that as a kind of something to compare against. So when a new opportunity comes, somebody says, I want a call with you, Kelly, you've got something to look back at and go, well, this was the thing I thought I was going to be doing. Which of these two things is more important? And you get to make a choice. And I think this feels like a good time to just add in, productivity happens before we take action. Productivity happens in the pause. It's not about what we're doing when we're in action. It's in those small decisions that we're making. And that's why I talk so much all over the place on LinkedIn all the time. I'm banging on about the pause. Instead of just saying yes to everything immediately, it's taking that moment to reflect and go, is that really more important than this?
Well, we see that quite a lot. If you're a solopreneur, you're expected to cover so many bases, aren't you? You have to be all things to your business and you have to cover all of those elements. And it's knowing, like you've said, what your own capabilities are, where your comfort zones are and what you need to outsource. And finances come into play with that, don't they? But in terms of being a part of a team player, and I've completely lost what I was going to say then, it's about how you piece those things together, isn't it? And working out whose strengths and weaknesses lie in those spaces and how you fit those as that piece of the jigsaw. And the pause piece, I think, is really interesting because it's a bit like marketing, having the time to think about what you're going to do before you do it. That's where the kind of the gold lies, isn't it? Not in the doing the post and the writing the content, but it's having that strategy plan as to what you're going to take forward and action. And that's what I'm hearing from you in that pause piece. It's actually, what direction am I going in? What is going to make a difference? And a very real example for me, I've got all day tomorrow after an early meeting to do project work. I've put 3 15-minute one-to-ones in with people that want to chat with me throughout the day. So my project work is going to immediately be affected, isn't it? Because I'm going to dip in and out of it to go and have those calls, because my brain's going, yeah, but you need to talk to those people because they want to talk to you. And I would just think people are doing that all the time, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think pay attention to how that feels for you tomorrow. This is a really good opportunity for you to experiment, because maybe you need those 15-minute calls to get your energy back up again.
True.
So we don't have to always, it's not always black and white into what's a good or a bad thing to do. We're all very different. It's finding what works for you. And if you know that a whole day, a whole open day with nothing in it, for a lot of people, I've got a client who will talk about spinning in her chair when she's got a day like that, because she's got all of this time and she just doesn't have any kind of parameters in it. Sometimes having a few things in like that can actually be helpful. So, and that won't be true for everyone, but just notice tomorrow, Kelly. I'd be curious, and then let me know.
Yeah, no, definitely I will. And I think what I'm hearing, I think what people can take away from this is just jot it down. Like, I'm not someone to journal, but whether you're into journaling or not, but just take notice of these things. I've started to write down a done list rather than a to-do list. I've just started to write down what I've done, because a to-do list to me doesn't necessarily work in the same way, because it's all in here. What I'm trying to do is to train myself to be good at to-do lists. So what I'm doing is just going, okay, well, I've done this today and I've done this today. And it's actually making me think about tomorrow. Oh, because I've done that, I now need to do that. So I'm starting to generate proper to-do lists. So it's about reframing it for you, isn't it? And working out, because like you've said this before, something that works for one person is not necessarily going to work for the other. And to try and fit into that mold, it is not going to work. So you've got to experiment, haven't you?
Yeah, you have. And it all comes back to this whole mindfulness thing, paying attention. You know, I did a talk yesterday in a community of, it's a marketing group, and I was talking about the time, energy and attention that we all have available to us.
Yeah.
And I always slightly worried when I go to these things, because I think people are gathering expecting me to say, if you just do this, all of your productivity problems will be solved. What I'm actually saying is, here's ways of thinking about time, energy and attention. Now go away and pay attention. Do some monitoring and find what works for you. And sometimes, actually, I always think people are not going to want to hear that. But yesterday, somebody said to me, do you know what? I'm so fed up of being sat in a room with someone telling me, just do it like this. And you know that for 80% of the people in that room, that's not going to work. So having someone say, actually, it's about you finding what works for you. And of course, if people are working with me, I will help them with that. But it's actually quite refreshing. You are in control. And just because someone over there can put things in their diary, schedule out an entire day and actually stick to it, doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you if you can't do that.
Find the method that works for you. Yeah, fascinating. Yeah.
That point about space to think, Kelly, it was Nick Shrimpton, wasn't it, that said about before leaping into doing your this was specific to marketing, but I'd imagine it applies to most things in businesses. Before you leap into the doing, like, jump on the next platform. We hear it all the time. You said it earlier, don't you? The lady who's like, I've got to do a YouTube channel. We hear all the time, I've got to get on podcasts. Like, and I kind of want to say, why? Like, what do you think that's going to do? And we do Summit as part of our How to Gain Referrals workshop, where we help people develop their clear marketing message. And once you understand the formula of how it works, you do know the answer to your own question about what you market, because all we do is we look at, so people just keep saying, I'm going to keep playing around with the wording and I'm going to keep playing around with the imagery. And at some point, if they're going to succeed, they have to sit back and go, does anyone want that thing? And am I communicating it in a way that it appeals to the people that do want that thing? And if the answer to either of those questions is no, work out the wording before trying to imprint it onto another place, particularly at networking, for example. So there's just a huge power, isn't there? Isn't it interesting, as we're talking about time management? You said at the top, Louise, that people think is about cramming in more. Good time management is about knowing when to stop.
Yeah, and actually we can't manage time. It's going to keep marching on in the same way that it always does. We can only manage ourselves. And understanding that, I think, can be really helpful. And I think the challenge, we've talked a lot about, creating space, having time to think, taking the pause, all of that kind of stuff. It's true that trying to manage yourself in the moment to moment, is really hard, because you are feeling the pull as a business owner of wearing all of the hats, people wanting a piece of you all over the place and not quite knowing which way is up half of the time. And that is why we need to give ourselves these purposeful pauses. And can I hit you with some more neuroscience?
Oh,
Please.
yeah.
Apparently, I only learnt this recently. So we all know about executive function, which is the set of cognitive processes that help us to plan, prioritize, focus, juggle, all of that kind of stuff. Not actual juggle tasks, right? But what I didn't realize until recently was that there are two neural pathways that underline all of that. There's your hot executive function system, which takes over when emotions are really high in the heat of the moment. And then there's the cool executive function, which is in charge when things feel calm and the stakes feel a lot lower. And we do switch between the two, but usually one overrides the other. And as you can probably imagine, most people don't make good choices or logical choices when they are operating in that hot executive function in the heat of the moment, when they're already feeling a little bit up against it, which is why it's so important that we give ourselves the space and for it to be planned in, to allow ourselves to be in that kind of cool executive function where we're feeling calm, we're feeling quiet, we're not in a panic. We can look back at our vision, go, right, what am I trying to achieve? And we can think about the steps we're going to take to get there. And if we can keep doing that monthly at the very least, it makes that in the moment decision making so much easier, because you're so much more connected to how you were thinking when you were in that calm state and to all of that kind of big picture stuff, which is why we're doing what we're doing, right? To get you to where you want to be.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And that's probably the right time, as you say, to be mapping that out, isn't it? To have that blueprint that you do refer back to when you're not in that best state to keep you grounded. Yeah. Oh, I love that, Louise. That's good.
I wonder if this sort of, I know Kelly's going to ask you about networking to wrap up, but this final question for me is around, I think it connects with what you're just saying there, that the question is about that not all business activities have a defined ROI. So if I think about something like networking, having a chat, you know, whether it be with the people that are around you or via networking, being on social media, you know, they don't always have a proven outcome, but they can give you other benefits like making you feel connected. You can improve your knowledge. Like social media, I don't think people realize you can learn so much about what the business world demands are, what kind of trends are, but you've got to be in an observational mode. Or just having a smile, Louise. Sometimes we just need to smile, don't we? So is it acceptable, and we're asking your permission, is there space to ease off and not always be productive during our working day? That's the question.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. And there's two parts to that, and I love it. So first of all, what even is your working day?
Yeah.
You're running your own business. You get to choose. If sitting at your desk 9 to 5 doesn't work for you, why are you trying to sit at your desk 9 to 5? So that's the first thing to think about. So for me, you know, I know that I need to take a break in the middle of the afternoon, and so I do. And I don't feel bad about it, because I'd much rather do that than be sitting at my laptop, faffing about, doing absolutely nothing and feeling really rubbish about myself. So, you know, sometimes I go and do some housework in the middle of the day. Can you imagine? I know. Sometimes I sit and watch an episode or 20 minutes of RuPaul's Drag Race because I feel like I need a bit of camp. You know, it's giving yourself a change of scenery, or getting up. If I'm hoovering, that's getting me moving if I've been sitting still for too long. And I think this also brings in this thought around, what do we even mean by things that aren't productive? Because I had a client who writing was a big part of her job, her business. And she knew that she wrote better when she'd been out for a 20-minute walk. So are we saying that that 20-minute walk isn't a productive use of her time? I had another client who needed to create a workshop and was utterly fed up. She was feeling completely uninspired and she was feeling really quite rubbish. So I asked her, what do you need to do to feel inspired? And her answer was a holiday in the peace and quiet with a good book. So I kind of said, okay, well, that's not possible right now, is it? But what's a smaller version of that you can do for yourself maybe this week? She took herself off with a book to a local cafe and sat under a tree and read for a bit. And she needed to do that to get the inspiration to allow her to create the things she needed to create. So are we saying that going off for a coffee with a book wasn't a productive use of her time? And it's really interesting, because I think sometimes I get annoyed that I have to, this is annoyance with myself, that I feel like I have to frame all of this stuff in productivity terms, when actually we're looking after ourselves, looking after our well-being, keeping our cup filled up. But in the culture that we live in, where being lazy is the worst possible thing, sometimes we have to look at it like that if it's going to give us the permission that we need to actually do those things. So.
Yeah. And we've decided to be business owners for a reason, so that we can have an element of that, and we forget that in the moment, don't we? And I really love what I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and we were having a similar discussion to that piece of, well, if money wasn't an object and, I was living my best life and pressures weren't so great on me in the business, what would I be doing right now? Okay, I might go on holiday, as that example is, but what's the next best thing I can do? So just keep bringing it down, rather than feeling like you're hard done by because I really want this thing and I can't have it because I've got all this pressure. Just keep reducing it down. Okay, well, I can't have the holiday. Can I have a weekend away? No, I can't have a weekend away. Could I have an afternoon off? Could I have a couple of hours off? Like, what is the next best thing that I could do so that you're just not feeling deprived? Because again, it plays into that thing, doesn't it?
Yeah. And how miserable would our lives be if we felt like everything we did every minute of every day needed to be some kind of, measurable thing?
Yeah, a justification.
Yeah. That's not why I'm doing this. So, yeah.
Valuable point, valuable question to end on. One more question though, Louise. I want to talk to you about networking. So you are a great networker. I am a big fan of yours though. People didn't already know this. You are wonderful in the networking space, but did you understand it from the outset? Did you really get it? Or have you adjusted the way you network over time?
My relationship with networking has been non-existent until about 2.5 years ago now. No, that's not quite true. My first experience of networking was when I was fresh out of uni. So I was early 20s working for a firm of independent financial advisors, where networking meant being in a room with a bunch of middle-aged men in suits talking about or attempting to talk about something I really didn't care about. Financial planning was never my bag. And I hated it. And it was such a struggle. And I was a massive introvert, very timid at that age, surrounded by all of these people who I had basically nothing in common with, and I hated it. So I didn't go anywhere near it again. And when I started my business, I did go to some conferences and things in the early days, and I found the networking components of that really hard. My anxiety would go absolutely through the roof, and I would go and hide, because the idea of trying to infiltrate a group of people that are already talking and all of that just made me want to vomit. So I hated it up until only, I hadn't even thought about joining a networking group until I was hearing people say such incredible things about you guys. And Only is the only networking that I do, and I love it. So, and I think the thing that I love about it is the idea of kind of networking as a transactional thing just does not appeal to me at all, because networking is not a big part of my business. It's not a big part of my strategy. So I'm not in enough rooms that if someone was expecting me to be referring left, right and centre, I'm not in enough rooms to be doing that. And I would just constantly feel like I was letting everyone down. So the fact that that is not an expectation in Only, and that it's okay to use the network just as a way, that diminishes it. And I don't mean to. I think it's really important as a way to build relationships and to feel connected to other business owners, to help people if I can help people, and just to feel less lonely. That for me has been the thing that's just completely changed my relationship with networking. So yeah, wow. I'm a big fan of you as well, both of you.
Oh, thank you, Louise. I feel really bad now because I didn't know you were going to say that, and I feel like that was a pay you later moment. But I am going to, pat on the back to us, James, I think, because you raised some really, really valid points there, Louise. Networking has changed dramatically over the last 2 years, 6 months, and there has become this divide. And whilst I think people's initial thoughts are, well, I need some business, I'm going to go networking. Quite often they come at the wrong time. They may not have enough business, so there's a pressure on them to deliver and to get an ROI in it, and that never works. The best networkers do go for exactly the reason you go. It's a really lonely place being a business owner. Who wouldn't want to be in a community of other like-minded business owners that I class you as my friend? Do you know what I mean? And I've got hundreds of friends of varying levels that I know I can pull on and have a chat with, as James has gone back to that reference with Ash. That's so valuable when you're sat in your office, in your home, and you're just working day in, day out. So I'm glad you found us. I'm extremely glad you found us, because helping people also doesn't mean you have to spend money. Listening to this, just taking a few nuggets of information, and I know even when you're doing your introduction in a meeting, people are taking away things that they will have forgotten. I do need to think about myself a bit more. I do need to put a bit more importance on me, and even at that small level, that's helping people.
Yeah.
I feel like it's come. Go on, Louise.
No, you go, James. It's okay.
Just that point about we're back to this time to think, aren't we? Because when I first went networking, I was there to sell, didn't know what I was selling, made myself feel dreadful because I was pitching at people whose eyes glazed over. I didn't even know how to pitch. And as soon as I went back with no agenda other than I just want to get to know how have these businesses got established was kind of my secondary consideration. But I just went along to get to know people, to have a chat. Because like you, Louise, I didn't really know. I was on my own, like chatting to people. Let's ask some questions. And as soon as you take that pressure of expectation of an outcome, which is what we've kind of touched on today, you can relax. Your body language changes, your physiology changes, you feel okay, you're more receptive, aren't you? But it starts with take the pressure off yourself, which is what sounds like you've done.
Common theme here.
Yes, that's true. Yeah.
Kelly would say to me, James, basically what you've just described is just relax a bit. Just
everybody just chill out.
Yeah,
definitely. Wouldn't it be nice if that happened? Everybody just chill out a little bit. It'll all be fine.
That is my mission. That is the mission that I'm on in my business, is to get everyone, just not everyone, because it doesn't suit everyone, but for the people who feel they need it, just to feel that it's okay to slow down a bit.
Yeah, most definitely.
Brilliant. Well, Louise, thank you so much. You've been a fabulous guest. We are very grateful.
Yeah, very grateful.
Very much.
I would highly recommend, if you don't know Louise and you're not connected with her, connect with her. Look at her stuff because it's brilliant. That would be my suggestion. Thank you, Louise.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Louise. This has been Adventures in Networking. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you again next month. Goodbye. Dun, 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 dun.